it is 90 degrees where I'm at, but am I still wearing my Eras Tour gray quarter zip? Yes, I am. There is hope, my friends. I didn't have tickets until 10 days before. There is hope. If anyone's interested in that story, I mean, it's nothing I really did. But anyway, there is hope, my friends. Please forgive me while I might be sweating while I make this video, but I will be wearing my Taylor Swift merch until I die. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Olivia. I'm a UX designer and illustrator, and today we're going to talk about something that has been asked of me many times. One was like how I draw faces, so I have that video here if you want to see how I go about drawing faces. But this is specifically about how do I design book characters, or how do I draw and decide on how to draw the book characters that I do draw in all the books that we read. Like Percy Jackson, Six of Crows, ACOTAR, all of these books. How do I go about designing those book characters? So I want to share that process with you today. And to do that, we're actually going to pick on Six of Crows and use that as the example of how I decided how to draw those characters. I am a UX designer by trade. That's what I do professionally. And the design process is how we go about solving problems. And ultimately, creating illustrations, designing characters is about solving problems. It sounds fancier than it is. And I think it's something that we do more so than we realize. So the design process consists of like 5 or 6 stages, depending on who you talk to. It's like the empathize phase, the research phase, the understanding the problem. There's the define phase, where then you actually define what you want to solve or the problem that you want to solve, and like it's the scope and its constraints. Then you want to ideate, where you can like sketch or design, and prototype and test, and that can be very circular. You might want to do that a few times until ultimately you develop it, you deliver it, and you start from the beginning again if you want to restart. So it's a circular process. And I see this, it sounds fancier than it is, and the design process can be like, corporate speak, but it's actually not. And I think as illustrators and as designers, it's something that we all do when we are creating anything, really. I think it's something that we do just naturally because it's just the way of like a good way of solving problems. So when we talk about book characters, when you want to design or draw a book character, like design the look and feel of a book character, you are solving that problem. So where the design process talks about empathize, and that would be, maybe reading the book as well, you want to find inspiration. The first thing to do when you want to empathize or understand the problem space is find inspiration, understand the book, and better understand like the space in which you're trying to draw. So when we're in that like empathize inspiration phase, it's important to summarize the book, but also categorize it in certain ways. And while it's important to categorize this book because that will influence how you illustrate these characters, at least it does to me. This is my process of how I do this. So the book is dark, it's gritty, it's dynamic, it's edgy, but it's also still young adult, right? But it has this like, when I'm imagining the book, it has this like bluish gray sheen on it, like not Twilight, don't get me wrong. But, it's darker. And that's something that's important to keep in mind when you begin to design these characters, or something I have to try to tell myself, like, what is the nature of the book? And that will influence the style in which I decide to draw these characters in, or how I decide to portray them. So once you've defined that, and like, this doesn't have to be something you like literally write down. This just might be something you're understanding. I then go into Pinterest and I will start creating a mood board. I oftentimes I'm like looking for other people's art, like seeing how they drew them. That's a big like source of inspiration, obviously, is just seeing how other people solve the problem. And oftentimes that helps me because I'm not always paying attention to the specific details of a character when I'm reading the book. Like I might not remember that the character has blue eyes, right? Some people really care about that stuff. For me personally, I don't really care about eye color that much. It's just not a huge issue. But sometimes it's good to see other people do that. And you're like, oh, okay, so now I know this person has like blue eyes or whatever. So I create a mood board that just captures like the overall vibe of these characters, other people's illustrations. I oftentimes look up actors or models. I might type in like Six of Crows fan cast. And this was obviously previous to the show, and just see how other people may have like thought that this person looks like. And all the while, what this is helping me do is like craft the like hazy image that I might have in my mind. Like while I'm reading the book, I see something, but most of the time I'm seeing more of like a feeling rather than I'm seeing like an actual person. I'm not like seeing a literal face. I'm just kind of seeing an aura, I guess. I don't know, not to get too like weird, but that really is what I see. So doing all of this is trying to help me better decide or figure out the different elements that help me craft the shape and the face of that person that I'm trying to ultimately end up drawing and design. Spotify is a big thing for me too, like getting the right mood. I might create different Spotify playlists for different characters if I just want to capture that particular person. But most of the time, it's like just a general, like, like Six of Crows playlist where it might have like this song is specifically tailored to Inej or this song is particularly tailored to Kaz. But it really is just capturing the overall image or feeling of the book. And that way, it also helps me like start to define that hazy aura that I had from before. So my Pinterest board might start to look something like this, where it has just a variety of different actors, illustrations, moods. So all of that is really like the empathize and the define phase. It's like, and from there, it's time to start sketching, right? You have all of these like different tools in front of you, and I really just start sketching. And one way that I start to design these characters, you want to define these characters in shapes. You start to realize that like different shapes illustrate different meaning. So shape design is a big thing in character design, and I'm not always the best at shape design. I'm not like a professionally trained character designer, and ultimately I do like my characters to look a little bit more natural. I don't exaggerate them as like caricatures, or don't tend to exaggerate. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you do start to notice that like certain shapes define or like illustrate different meanings. So someone that has like harder edges might come off across as like harder, like just like an edgier character versus someone who's just like more soft. And there are ways to break those rules, like, and they should be broken at times, and of course, and they're not rules, they're just like concepts. And there are times where those are broken really well. But I've noticed that those are just like general ideas. Like we associate these lines with these types of meanings. That's something important to keep in mind when it comes to start designing these characters. So when I started illustrating Kaz, for example, I really did start to think about like hard lines and like tougher shapes. Just based off like my understanding of him and like again trying to craft that image, you start to make decisions, and I start to make decisions. Like I think he may have a crooked nose, or just like a bump on his nose, just because he's been through a lot. Like his story is he, like grew up on the streets. Like he has a really sad backstory. So like maybe I include a little bump on his nose to help illustrate some sort of history there. I give him like a little more angular jaw, angular lines. And I look up that inspiration in other photos because, he's sick. He didn't grow up wealthy. So he might have like some like lack of like fat in his face. Like you start to make these decisions of the character based off the story, which is why it's so important to know the book and do some of that work beforehand, because it can also help you start to make more creative decisions when it comes to like designing these characters. I tend to illustrate a lot. I'll have like a bunch of different sketches where I'm just trying to capture the like mood and vibe of these characters. And like, so for example, again, like Nina's just curvier lines and have a little bit more of like a relaxed nature because she's a little bit more of a relaxed character versus Kaz, who's a little bit more like, like tough and rigid. And doing this takes practice. Like it's not the first drawing that you do, you're going to get the character perfectly. But that's why the inspiration phase, like I said, is so important, because it does help you get to be able to make some of these decisions when it's time to start making them. Like when you understand who they are, you can have fun with like what you're trying to solve and like what you're trying to bring about. So the act of character designing is, again, solving a problem and making these decisions, understanding the story, gathering that inspiration. And once you start to draw the character, when you draw that first circle and you draw that head, you're making decisions about this person, using the information about like the character's physical descriptions, right? It's so easy to just like translate physical descriptions onto the page, but it's another thing to add that layer of story and be like, I want him to look weathered, or I want her to look like she has hope, right? And understanding that person, that aura, like, right, that I talked about earlier, and bringing that to life in the character. And I think that that's what makes my character designs the most successful, is that like, while I do care about obviously the literal interpretation of the characters' physical descriptions, I do tend to focus more on just like the idea of the person, or just like who I feel like they are, and not just what they look like. These characters really do feel alive to me when I'm drawing them or when I'm reading about them, and like that music and that mood board is all just trying to help me picture the person that already feels pretty alive to me in my head. If that makes any sense. That might sound weird, but if you know, you know. This is why it's also important, I think, to like not just draw characters like this, like stoic. I try, whenever I draw a character, if I am just doing like a 3/4 view, which is a great way to start, obviously, like shared all my Six of Crows portraits. I like to add personality even in that moment, where like one's smirking, one looks like upset. Kaz might look upset. Nina is like smirking at you, because again, it's all about story, and it's all about sharing that with the viewer and with yourself, right? Bringing that person to life on the page is really the goal of illustrating these, rather than just copying down a physical description. And that's essentially how I design book characters. I hope that makes sense. I hope that was helpful. This was like a general overview of that process, using specifically Six of Crows characters. And hopefully this is something that you can begin to understand and implement as you attempt to design your own characters. I do plan on doing more like fandom art school videos where I can teach people how to draw specific characters. But I wanted to take this video. I don't know how long this ends up being, how long I've gone for, but I wanted to specifically talk about the overall process, because ultimately I could teach you how to draw a character, but if you want to learn to design characters yourself in books that maybe I have not read, this is the general process of like how I do that, and making sure you're trying to capture the essence of a person and not necessarily just the physical traits of a person. So hopefully this was helpful in doing that and helping you understand how to make those decisions and get better at designing characters yourself. Leave any comment below, any questions you might have. If there is a particular character that you do want me to teach how to draw, let me know. I do plan on doing more short fandom art schools on TikTok, so follow me there. I am on Instagram. I have my Etsy shops, my Shopify store. So please check me out across, the internet. And I'll be back in another video soon. I'm trying to do like twice a month. We'll see. We'll see how well this goes. At the end of the day, just uploading a video is a win to me. So I'll be back soon in your feed. So follow, like, subscribe, and I'll be back soon. And until then, bye friends. Bye.